This is Leisha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast, brought to you by Hoxo Media. And I'm so excited to welcome today's guest. For my fellow Women Unleashed, this will be a very familiar face to you. This is Mia Weston, who in her day job is marketing manager for Consult Energy. And she is absolutely going to tell us all about her community work as well in diversity and inclusion, which is why I've invited her on today. So welcome to you today, Mia. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm really good, thank you. How are you getting on?
I'm doing brilliantly. I've been very excited about this interview with you today because you're just so vibrant. You've got such a brilliant personality. So for those who aren't yet familiar with you, which I hope there will be after this interview, tell us a little bit about yourself, Mia.
Like you said, I'm the marketing manager at Consult Energy. So I essentially head up the marketing platform for the UK and US divisions, which is a lot of fun, but it keeps me very, very, very busy. Other than that, I'm an LGBTQ plus activist, and I do a lot of work with people specifically in the workplace around diversity and inclusion, which is some of the juicy topics that we're going to be talking about today.
Indeed, absolutely. So, well, thank you very much for joining us. And I know that for those who are watching, the few people that watch us on YouTube, you are sat in I think, 5th floor office of Consult Energy while we're still recording this during lockdown, free, February 2021. Thank you to your very kind employer for letting us use your offices to do that. So talk to us about that journey into, obviously, share as much personal information as you choose to. Talk about the diversity and inclusion, because that's essentially why I've invited you on here today, but we will contextualize it within recruitment, obviously. So talk to us a little bit about your sort of personal journey, about why you've become this leading voice and authority on it.
Yeah, so for those who don't know me, I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so I feel like a few people do. I am a transgender queer woman of color. So what that means is I've been through hell and back in regards to sort of culture, from being from a Punjabi background to, just being in sales, recruitment, etc. It's been difficult to say the least. And why I got into sort of doing the D&I sort of aspect of sort of activism and trying to get people more aware, etc., is literally because of the fact that I have been through the ringer and back from, I left, so I worked for a company called Penna, which is a subsidiary and part of the group of Adecco, so a huge global platform. And I worked with them for like 3.5 years in their advertising, so recruitment advertising branch. And I left to start a new position. Bells going off. So I left to start a new position with a new company within healthcare recruitment. And when they found out I was trans, I had already gave in my resignation, signed a contract. They rescinded my contract after they found out I was trans. Their CEO was on a impromptu call with me, and I wasn't clean shaved. I wasn't wearing makeup, which is not an issue for me because I don't hide my identity in any way, shape or form. I am who I am and I'm true to myself. But unfortunately, the CEO was not on board with that. And they said that we don't think you'll be a good cultural fit, which is not great to hear. And I literally openly asked, I said, well, is it because I'm brown or trans? It's one or the other. I'd like to know. And then she just ended the call. So yeah, it was really tough to go through that. And then I was faced with a lot of other issues like that in my job search. I'd already left my job. I was out of work for about 2 months, which was really difficult.
Of course. And what any job seeker goes through, anyone listening to this that's left a job, and you've got all the different anxieties, but you on 2 different levels, you had all this hope and believed that you were going to be starting with a new employer. But I think what shocked me when we talked about this story previously off video is that it was on a video call, so you could see the reaction. So she wasn't hiding her intolerance and prejudice towards you, and she never actually gave you a response. But to get you to that point in your life, I mean, you've, like you say, you've had a traditional upbringing. You've probably reached a point at puberty where you've thought, this is not who I'm going to be. You've gone through this incredible journey to, you are inspiring to so many people, and then to, be almost persecuted in a professional context. It beggars belief. Do people tend to sort of go towards you in work? Do they sort of trust you with other things because they know that you've sort of rescued yourself almost?
Yeah. So I joined Consult Energy just over 1.5 years ago, and one of the key things that Richard, my director, and Kevin, the co-directors, said was my resilience, and that's why they were so drawn towards me. And that interview process in itself was amazing, to go through an interview and showcase that you're trans, etc., and have someone accept you for that. It was amazing. And yeah, it was amazing. And since then, I've had so many different roles within the company. I went from being a recruitment consultant within data and analytics within the energy sector, to then joining back office support and dealing with all the compliance side of things, so making sure like placements had everything they needed. And then when COVID, and I was also executive assistant to the directors as like an add-on, just because they could trust me, and I'm usually quite well organized. And then that led to, you know, the amazing role that I'm in now. When COVID hit, it was a matter of, well, you're amazing at every single thing you do. So, you know what, head up marketing for us. This is your baby. Do what you need to do. And they've just sort of left me to it. And obviously everything that I've done has been really good.
I think that, you know, to bring COVID into this, you know, as we record this, we've hopefully got a roadmap out of lockdown 3. But I think if I look back over the last 12 months, I think those that have propelled forward in whether that's a professional or a personal context have shared vulnerability. And clearly that was one of the things that had identified you as different and strong and resilient. You use that word resilient to your employees, and, you know, bravo to your employees. But actually, that you almost need to park the diversity piece and say they hired you because they could see what a strong person you are. And surely that's what we're here to do as recruiters, isn't it? We're here to identify the right talent.
And that's what they said to me. They literally said, oh, like, initially they didn't know that I was trans. I have something called passing privilege, which means when I'm like dolled up, you can't necessarily tell that I'm trans, which is fine. You know, I try and use it to my advantage in regards to diversity, inclusion, and, you know, helping other people of the LGBTQ plus community. But they didn't know until I let them know that information within the recruitment process. And they literally hired me because they thought I was the best person for the job. They didn't care that I was a trans woman of color who's queer. They didn't care.
That is the soundbite. That is the soundbite, isn't it? Because ultimately that is what we should all be doing. And that leads me very beautifully into, you know, if we look at the recruitment sector, obviously I am very privileged that I sit, you know, looking over the whole industry. We don't, as Rhetoric, you know, we get to speak to recruitment business owners of all types, you know, across every sector and market you can imagine. And diversity and inclusion has become the sort of buzz phrase of 2020/2021. There's no question about it. So how do you think as a sector we're evolving within that? And actually it kind of leads on to the next thing, which is we talked about this off camera, how much of it is just marketing rhetoric and how much of it is actual real gritty, we are going to do something to make ourselves stand out?
There's definitely progress. It's just slow. Because people, from my experience, like outside of sort of my day-to-day work, I actually talk to a lot of like leaders within our sector, so within energy, recruitment, etc. And what we talk about is what's holding you back, and a lot of the time it's budget. You know, it's this sense of like, oh, we want to do X, Y, Z. And when we talk about it, we shout about it. We're like, okay, what are you actually doing? Like, let me see your policies, you know? And it's just a matter of they don't have the quote unquote funding, which they do. They just don't want to spend the money, you know, to invest in training and development for their team from organizations. Let's say Stonewall, they do amazing LGBTQ plus training sessions, etc. But it's not just always about, you know, what I shout out about, which is LGBTQ plus inclusivity. You know, their Equality Act covers a lot of different bases that are not people aren't always aware about. So that's age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity leave, race, religion or belief, sex, and sexual orientation. All of these things encompass protected characteristics, and people don't always think about that. They always think about, you know, LGBTQ plus, disability, etc. And it's broadening your mind to understand that, you know, we spoke to Jane Hutton not long ago, who's an amazing human being. We spoke about the intersectionality of, you know, having that sense of shared experiences, right? So listening to people is really important. And there is an evolution going on, but it's slow. It's not as progressive as people think it is, but also people don't understand the benefits properly. It's a buzzword. Like, you know, a couple of years ago, it was synergy. It was all about synergy this, synergy that. And it's like, okay, nice word. What does it mean? How are you incorporating it into your business plan? How is it helping your business? How is it helping the wider community? It wasn't, and it hasn't. And it's the same with diversity and inclusion. What are you doing? You know, okay, you've got the diversity part down. Where's the inclusion side of things? Like, where are you going to go with this? And, you know, so it's really interesting when how do you make it from, okay, it's evolving and we're doing X, Y, Z, which is great. The mindset is there, but then what are you doing about
What's
it?
the actual
you know,
action? Well, this is what I mean about rhetoric. Because people talk,
yeah.
What does it actually mean in terms of your succession planning, in terms of your external hiring strategy? What in terms of you as a recruit, if you're listening to this as a recruitment business owner, you're then educating your clients. And that's where the cascade has to happen. We have to be the innovators here. And that's why I'm so thrilled to have you on here. And that's why I'm really proud to be an ambassador for Inclusion Crowd, where it's all going to be about re-educating people. And it, you know, let's maybe bring into this the unconscious bias that everybody has. You can't deny that everybody has unconscious bias.
Everybody has it.
Everybody
you
has
know.
it. And it's being more mindful about that and maybe talking about that during appraisals, you know, during, you know, reviews, so people understand and leaders can then understand that that's part of it. And do you think, does this normally sit with HR, a diversity and inclusion piece? Is that where it's been segregated almost?
Typically, yeah. It's like, you know, you have the top dog who is, especially in my sector, with an energy, they're typically a cis, white, older gentleman, and they'll just pass it on to HR because they don't really care about it. And then HR will do everything they need, you know. Like, you know, I was very lucky enough to sit with our head of people and create our diversity and inclusion policy and sit there and work with her and say, okay, as an entity that I am, here's the advice that I can give you and the company to create this document. And, you know, it's really important to have that conversation piece and just be like, okay, it's not just HR.
No,
it's everywhere. You know, there are times where you will hear something on the floor, you know, you could hear, and I don't want to generalize recruiters, and I don't want to, like, you know, pile everyone into this one group of like a typical like sales people where they're very go-getting, loud, whatever. Because, you know, in my own team, people aren't like that. But people can be loud, people can be boisterous, and people can sometimes say things without thinking. You know, especially as we move forward, you know, you'll get people who are younger, you know. People think I'm really young because I was born in 96, but we have people joining the team who are born in the 2000s. And
stop.
That's crazy.
96, that was like last year, wasn't it?
Exactly. And we're having people join who are much younger than I am and somehow making me feel old, even though I'm not. And it's one of the things where not everyone has been in a workplace for long enough to know the protocol of, you know, someone uses a slur or anything like that, or, you know, which is not always common, but having the confidence to say something about it is really key. You could be anyone. You can be just a sales representative. You can just be a recruiter. Just to be a recruiter. I take that back. Recruiters are phenomenal and we do amazing things, right? We change the world. This is literally how I see it.
Change people's lives, that's for sure.
Exactly. And it's like, have the confidence to say, that's not okay. You should refrain from using language like that. And then once you're comfortable in doing that, which comes from training and development, you can then pass that on in your own day-to-day life, thus changing the community and society as we go forward.
It's changing language. And actually, I think you pick up on a really, really good point there. As mum to two teenagers, you know, I don't know, what does that make them? Generation I don't know, they're not millennials. I can't remember what the new generation is.
I
lose track of it all. So, you know, but you're talking about, you know, you're bringing in 18, 20, 22-year-olds, you know, the younger generation. Generally speaking, they don't see colour, they don't see religion, they don't see sexuality, they don't see gender at all. And I'm basing that on my own two daughters who have, you know, gone through their own personal journey with their father coming out as gay when they were very young, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. And to them, it was absolute, why on earth didn't he come out as gay when he was younger, when he was 13, 14? You know, to their age group, it was like, why would you have to hide it? So I think for companies to, you know, think about your recruitment strategy of what Mia's saying here, bringing in people who by actual virtue of who they are, you will be educated by them, you know, by bringing in people who are, you know, 20, 21, 22. First of all, that I see ageism all the time. I sense I often have conversations with clients where they'll, you know, we'll talk about culture and we'll talk about, you know, dynamic, and we'll talk about, you know, exciting and it's, you know, cutting edge and all this, and then they'll say, you know, we really want somebody in there, you know, somebody quite young in their 30s, and I go, oh, and I deliberately don't say anything, and I just think, right, park it, and then I come back and they, you know, and I'll say, you know, talk to me about the sort of person. They go, oh, someone like you, and I go, I'm 46. I'm not in my 30s. So what you've basically said there is that I'm too old for your company. And they go, and you can see them physically, maybe not at the moment, but physically backtracking, going, oh, I'm just going to eat my words. No, what you meant was that you're basing that decision on discrimination. So it's all around us, and it's our jobs as recruiters to get people to challenge and think outside the box, and to base it from what you said at the very start of this is about someone's skills, attitude and mindset. And actually your journey has made you who you are. You're strong, you're resilient, you've got such an amazing sense of humor. You know, you've you know, this aplomb of absolute high energy. You're perfectly suited to your sector, clearly. High energy, you know, you're just infectious, I imagine, to work with, and you've just got a very positive way, but you've also got real humility and vulnerability. So you're a real person. And that's where I think everybody just needs to maybe stop and think, is it just rhetoric? Are we just putting it on our website because it's the latest badge to have? Or do we actually have something meaningful we want to do here through the people? Like, you know, you mentioned Jane, but we'll have to tag Jane in this. She's just, for anyone that doesn't know, Jane Hatton, she actually suffered an injury which led to her disability, and she now runs a recruitment company, basically placing people with disabilities, both physical and mental as well. And she's just amazing, isn't she? She's
phenomenal.
Just really humble, kind, but very proactive. You know, brilliant advocate for seeking change, and I know we both learned something on the show that we did with her. And I do think that the brilliant thing that's come out of COVID, apart from that, I think there's been many things positive that have come out, is actually diversity and inclusion isn't just a badge anymore. We are really, barriers have gone. Ironically, remote working has actually almost made barriers go. So we're going to, you know, so I think maybe if you'd gone to that interview now with that CEO, maybe things would have gone differently. But I'm very glad you didn't go there.
God, 100%. And what people, so for the recruitment leaders who are listening, who are a bit more old school, you know, what you have to remember is it's not just about smashing the phones anymore, right? Like, you have to incorporate things like marketing, like, you know, there's so many things you have to include rather than just, I'm going to whack open the yellow pages. It's more so about, think of the candidates as well. Your candidates are changing. So how you interpret and how you talk to people is obviously going to change.
Yeah.
If someone called me and spoke to me the way a traditional recruiter would, I would hang up. But I was headhunted to join Consult Energy by Lily Moore, who is our, like, you know, she heads up data and analytics, and she was amazing, the way she spoke to me, etc. And it's changing your attitudes will not only help you in a sense of, you know, I don't want to dilute what inclusion diversity is, but sometimes people only respond to this. It'll make you more money. Hiring people like me will make you more money. Simply, you know.
It's a fabric of life. You know, that you can't just have one type of person in a business. You just end up with clones. And I think that you make a really good point. Ultimately, our end goal is to be a profitable business. And the top line and bottom line is measured by what makes you different in your sector. And if by having people of colour or people from different sexuality, irrelevant almost. It's what makes that person successful and who they are. And I think that's the key thing here. And I think so often we can get caught up in that rhetoric, and I'm very aware of that. And for most recruiters, ultimately, you make a really good point. We've had to become marketers. We've had to become, CRM specialists. We're not just
yeah.
Yellow Pages. You're not even old enough to know what Yellow Pages is. I know what roller dial was. You make a good point. You have to be so much more. You can't be transactional anymore. And I think, that's where having an office full of, one type of person makes you a very transactional, one-dimensional recruitment business, or just business full stop. And the fabric of people and the human race is that we're all different. We all have something. I can remember joining my first in the Midlands in Birmingham, and I was the first Jewish person most of them had ever met, which I just found absolutely bizarre. And I worked in a company of about 500 people, and literally there wasn't another Jewish person. And then I was just like, what? So, obviously,
it's crazy.
It's crazy. Like, really, you're not living in outer Mongolia. There are Jewish people that live in Birmingham. But actually, it's the same when I started in my school. So that's diversity and inclusion. I've educated people all my life as soon as I went to secular school at 11, that this is what the Jewish background, this is what Jewish people are about. It doesn't define who I am. It just happens to be part of the fabric of Lisa. That's it. And I think that's where this is where I just think you're just such a brilliant advocate for forget all the rhetoric. This is the reality. It's about getting under the skin, your personal journey of, coming out to a Punjabi family, going through the journey, and then having discrimination within the workplace. You've got so many so much advice to give to people and so many tips. So to finalize, what would those 3 top tips be? If you could go back to Mia, I can't work how old you are, let's say 15, 20 years ago, sort of pre-pubescent, what would you say to her?
Don't give up. Things are going to get tough, but you can and you will overcome it. And be safe. I think one of the things that people don't always think about is being safe. So sometimes you want to come out and it's not the best time to do so because you're not safe. You don't want to end up on the streets or anything like that. And I guess lastly is be true to yourself.
Yeah.
And anybody listening, it's very difficult to go through the things that we have gone through. Personally, I've been through hell. Like I said, I've been disowned by my family, etc. There's so many things that you will go through. And it's just a matter of being true to yourself will ground you. And also it will be your biggest asset. If I wasn't true to myself, we wouldn't be having the conversation that we're having. I'd be, a blank profile on LinkedIn. But no, that's not that's not what my world is about. I'm all about love and compassion. So yeah.
Well, I'm covered in goosebumps, and I imagine anyone that's listened to this far, thank you for staying with us. It's been and as I knew it would be. And just we started the show talking about Women Unleashed. I would like to add one final point to all those amazing tips that you've just given to our audience. Surround yourself with the right people. Because you've got the right people around you, and that could be a number of different tribes. It doesn't have to just be one. But if you surround yourself, if the support, if you're not getting the right support, or you're getting judgment, or people aren't accepting you, then you do need to really rethink the people around you. I think that I've learned that quite latterly. That like they say, you are what you eat. Well, you are what you consume, and you are the products of the people that are around you. Is it the top 5?
100%.
Top 5 people that's who makes you who you are. So
yeah.
So that's, definitely. Oh, I knew you'd be inspiring. And if anyone has got to the end of this and isn't covered in goosebumps, you clearly don't have a heart. So thank you for joining us. And thank you. We really appreciate your support. And thank you for joining us on the podcast today, Mia.
Thank you so much.